City. Oh, what a wonder. True. Very true. Oh. Hello. No, please. I won't harm you. You can come closer. This is not a large closet, but as you no doubt have surmised, its dimensions are not always static. Yes, I tend to spend a good deal of time in here, as it is it's the safest place I know within the, what would we call this place? Could call it the carceri. Some call it the Backrooms, or simply the liminal space. This closet, however, seems to be quite stable. Now, it may open up another wing or two from time to time, but as long as the color is the same, you shouldn't have any issues. I did once come in here when it was purple, which was my mistake. I should have known not to trust that hue. Purple can mean a great number of things in the natural world. Although I suppose perhaps this place is natural too, in its way. I've never been able to suss it out myself, exactly what or where this is. So many folks who come through this way enter it and exit it without really knowing anything about it. Oh, those who exit, of course. I have gotten out several times, but I do seem to find myself back in here. Thankfully, there's always plenty to read. I have amassed a small library here. It's what I do in the natural world. I am a librarian. It turns out there are quite a few books stashed here and there in this liminal space, if you know where to look, and I have found, at least, that it is a fruitful way to pass the time when one is trying to discern which hallway to wander down or which pool room to avoid. Very damp down there, not good for books whatsoever. You are welcome to take any of these books that you would like. I have several copies, and I've also read them so many times. I do find it peculiar, though fitting, that the Backrooms seem to, well, I don't like to anthropomorphize, but it seems they have a penchant for, well, there's a theme that, across all of the books that I have found here. I give you an example. The Tombs of Atuan by Ursula K. LeGuin. Now, technically, this is the second book in the original Earthsea trilogy. Now, it did become I believe, a quintology is what we'd call it, not counting the short stories. But you don't necessarily need to have read the first book in the series to appreciate this one. Now, I admit, when I first read this book, I was a little confused, but I wasn't coming at it from the right angle, as it were, much like here in the Backrooms, where coming at something at the right or wrong angle can seal your fate. The Tombs of Atuan is a story about a young girl named Tanar who is taken from her home and becomes a sort of priestess of this strange religion which reveres the what are they called? The well, they're underworld gods. And the place that she serves is a place of tombs, and she spends a great deal of time underground, wandering those tombs. It's very dark down there, and very easy to get lost. It's down there that she thinks about her priesthood, which she slowly realizes is a kind of imprisonment, and she meets a wizard named Ged, who helps her from her confinement. It's a lovely story, as all of Ursula K. LeGuin's stories are. Very well written, sparingly written, but beautiful in that spareness. And the character of Tanar becomes extremely important in the other Earthsea books moving forward. I recommend them all, but of course this is the one I've found, trapped here, in this place. So, but if you're in the mood for something a bit lengthier and more antique, shall we say, there is, of course, Alexandre Dumas' classic, The Count of Monte Cristo. Now this is a monster of a tome. I confess I've never made it all the way through myself, but it is highly entertaining. A young man named Dantes, I believe he's not even out of his teenage years, is engaged to be married to a beautiful woman. But the success in his sailing and in his personal life have led 3 villains to conspire against him and get him thrown into a terrible, terrible island prison. Now it's there in the prison that he meets a much older prisoner who is at the end of his life, but he sympathizes with Dantes and tells him about a secret treasure which only he knows how to find. And he encourages Dantes to use that treasure and make for himself a new life. Now, the Count of Monte Cristo is a very well-known story and has been adapted numerous times, of course. But there is something to be said for reading the original. Although, again, that something to be said cannot be fully said by me, as I have not quite made it all the way through the some 1,200 pages of this tome. Still, the longer I'm stuck in here, the more time I spend in this closet, I think I might finish it one of these days. Now, oh, well, of course, what collection would be complete without the Odyssey by Homer? Now, this is the Emily Wilson translation, which I have found to be a thoroughly readable translation. Now, there are some who prefer more classical translations, or ones which maintain a sort of rhyming scheme. I think that's all to the good. There are many, many translations of the Odyssey. Many, 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 which you can find. But I believe this one strikes a nice balance between simplicity and elegance. You have those turns of phrase that are beautiful and eloquent, but you also have, it's understandable. You won't get lost in the phrasing or find yourself tripping over the rhyming scheme. And of course, you do know the story of the Odyssey? Well, it's soon to be a film by Christopher Nolan starring Matt Damon, and was the subject of quite an entertaining musical written by Jorge Herons. If you get out into the natural world, I highly recommend you check it out. Pretty much every single track is a banger. That happens so seldom in life. But the story of the Odyssey is that of King Odysseus of Ithaca, after returning from his grand adventure fighting the war known as the Iliad, or rather the tale of the war is called the Iliad, which took place at Ilium, which is now known as Troy. Now, unfortunately for Odysseus and for his family and his kingdom, in fact, he angers the god Poseidon, god of the sea. And because of that, and his natural propensity to wander, he ends up spending 10 years at sea, roving from place to place, encountering giants and cannibals and lotus eaters and goddesses and witches and a whole host of gods and demigods. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Ithaca, his absent throne is being sought after by a series of barbarous suitors who wish to do away with his son and take the hand of his wife, Penelope, in marriage. Now, Penelope doesn't know if Odysseus is dead or if he's alive, but she holds out hope, and she weaves a tapestry every single day, telling the suitors that she will, of course, marry one of them once she finishes this mourning tapestry. But every night she undoes what she's done during the day. They don't catch on until the very end, I say. But yes, the Odyssey, a grand old tale, well worth telling and retelling time and time again. Now, this next book might not seem at the outset to follow our theme, but, well, I'll let you think about it. Now, this is The Player of Games, a novel in the what's known as the Culture series by Iain M. Banks. Now, the Culture books, each one takes place in a galaxy which is partially ruled over by the Culture. The Culture is not so much a race as a coalition of races which have advanced to the point where they don't have a government per se. They don't have an overriding ethos. They exist across numerous worlds, and they are, in effect, ruled over or guided or led, or perhaps supervised by these artificial intelligences which are godlike in their omniscience. I shouldn't say omniscience. They are nigh omniscient, shall we say. And each book tends to look at a certain event or characters which find themselves wrapped up in a conflict either with themselves or with planets that are not ruled over by the Culture. The Player of Games is interesting in that it tells the story of a man, Gurga, who, well, when you live in a society as advanced as the Culture, you can really do whatever you want. He's chosen to devote himself to playing games. Simple games, advanced games, ridiculously complicated games. And he ends up in searching for meaning because he's become so good at playing games, it's sort of boring for him now. He enlists himself in the Culture's espionage. What shall we say? It's hard to say espionage department because it isn't so much a government that they have, but, well, the point is, he finds himself taken to a planet far, far away from everything he knows and everything he's comfortable with, and asked to participate in a game which decides the leadership of this planet. What's wonderful about the story is that the exact rules of this game are never made entirely clear, and it's comical in how large and how truly complex the game is. But that's not really what the story's about. It's about a man in a strange place, slowly understanding the weight of privilege which he has had, and finding, well, purpose. Because, of course, when he begins, he simply wants to play this game win and go home. But the longer he plays and the more enmeshed he becomes with the culture, the more he realizes how unjust, barbaric, and, I'll put it this way, for those at the top of society, life is very good. For those at the bottom of society, life is very bad. And Gerga, who hasn't really thought about society for most of his life, suddenly comes into confrontation with what he sees as great, great injustice being done. It pushes him to not just want to play the game, but to win the game, win this tournament, which could place him at the very top of the planet's hierarchy. It's an interesting plot for a novel, and one in which you could read standalone, but which I believe has an even greater significance when viewed in the context of the culture books as a whole. It's a book I still think about, which is true for many of Banks's culture books. I've enjoyed almost all of them that I've read, and I highly recommend it. This next book I think you'll find to be quite relevant to your predicament. Now this is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I love this book. I love Susanna Clarke, even though she's only written 2 books in her career. Now, if the name is familiar, you might recall that she was the author of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which is just a wonder of a book. Now, I happen to like it because it is so very British and has so much to do with class and mores and etiquette, much more than it has to do with magic. I believe the reason for Susanna Clarke's, the reason she's only put out 2 novels is that she had an illness for quite a long time. But when this came to bookstores, I was elated. And though it is quite short, I find it to be a lovely, lovely book. It is meditative and strange. The story's about a man who begins as a nameless narrator, wandering through this colossal structure. There are rooms upon rooms upon rooms. It reaches as high as the clouds and as deep as the ocean. And in fact, the whole middle section of this land is regularly flooded by that ocean. Now I say land when in fact it's really more of like a cathedral or a temple that he finds himself in, with only statues to accompany him. As far as he knows, there are only 15 other humans who ever lived. He knows this because he occasionally finds their bodies. There is one other living man, which he has conversations with every few weeks or so. And it does seem to be a woman somewhere, threading through these rooms. This book, Piranesi, is of course named after... Now, Piranesi is most famous perhaps in our modern day for a series of fantastical drawings that he made of these prisons. And that might give you a clue as to what exactly is going on with our narrator, our Piranesi. Now, last I was out in the natural world, I heard that Studio Lyco actually had obtained the rights to this story and was going to make a movie of it, which I cannot think of a better match between studio and source material. Has it come out yet? Do you know? No? Well, I look forward to seeing it when and if I ever get out of this closet. Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. To say any more would be, I think, to spoil the story. But really, much like LeGuin, the true... The joy of reading this story is in simply reading it, It's not so much for the plot to get from point A to point B. It's traveling through it, as you would travel through the great house which Piranesi inhabits. It's meditative. It is lyrical. It is contemplative and strange, which I find myself, describing myself to myself, if that makes any sense. No? Ah, well. Another book I think you might find some joy in is The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman. Now, this, of course, is about a library which exists between worlds. Worlds which can be very similar or very different from the one you and I know. Now, the majority of the story takes place in an alternative London, in which our protagonist is accompanied by a assistant who is more than what he seems. This was it's a very fun, very standard sort of fantasy adventure, with a little bit of romance, perhaps, or an intimation of one, perhaps, in the future. I believe there are several books in this series. I have not picked up the others, but I did enjoy my time with this one. I suppose I am drawn to stories of places which exist between worlds, and protagonists who find themselves lost and wandering within them. Ah, yes. This is a book which at one time was quite prominent, but is rarely mentioned anymore, I believe. And it is my belief that the reason it is not is because it is difficult. House of Leaves by Mark C. Danielewski. This is one of my favorite novels of all time, if not my very favorite. But how would I even begin to describe this story? Well, the simplest way I can describe it is that it is about a house that is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Another way to describe it is that it is about a documentary about a house that is bigger on the inside than on the outside. Another way to describe it is that it's about an old man writing a book about a documentary about a house that is bigger on the inside than on the outside. And still another way to explain it is to say that it is discovered, that is to say the old man's writing, by a hopeless drug addict named Johnny Truant, who may be suffering a psychological breakdown as he delves deeper and deeper into both his own psyche and strange upbringing and this documentary, the Davidson record, about a house that is bigger on the inside than on the outside. The book here by Mr. Danielewski it does something which not many books do, which is it plays with the format severely. Sometimes you'll find only a single word on a page. Sometimes you'll find shapes on the page. Some words are in different colors than others, and all of it means something. The book itself is a labyrinth. And like the labyrinth, it contains a monster on the inside, which they sometimes refer to as the Minotaur. And yet, at the same time, the book isn't about that, is it? It's about a family. It's about a relationship between a husband and wife. It's about motherhood. It's about the fragility of time and space. It's a mystery. It's a horror story. It's everything. The house is everything. Alan Moore, the comic artist, has spoken many times on the adaptations of his works, which is to say he is against them, just as a blanket statement, because he believes that he wrote his stories as comic books, and they're not meant to be in other mediums. They're not meant to be plays or movies or books or television shows. They're meant to be comic books. And if they are transferred into another medium, they are another thing. And if you want to tell a story in the medium that you're choosing. I say this to say that House of Leaves was always intended to be a book. And I know someday, somewhere, someone will make a television series or a movie about it. And the reader in me is of two minds about this. On the one hand, I always want more people to be exposed to the stories which have given me such joy. But as a snooty literary critic, I truly believe that House of Leaves must stay a novel, because that is the format which it was intended for, or what it was written as. It is an adventure to read this book. It is a puzzle to read this book. It is a headache, and at times a nightmare to read this book. It is at turns funny, always weird, and sometimes very frightening. And nothing can approximate the feeling of being truly scared by a book. Or is it a book? Is it something else entirely? It is a wonderful work of art. And, as you can imagine, it is thematic with where we find ourselves today. There are many other books which follow this theme. People trapped in liminal spaces, or passing through worlds upon worlds, finding them strangers in strange lands. These are some of them. I invite you to read all of them. Some of them, one of them, when or if you have the time. But if you will excuse me, I begin to feel a rumbling in the firmament, and I believe this closet is about to turn very purple. Let's away and see if we can find some other means of escape or security. Thank you for indulging me. Let's I think I see an alcove over here that we might be able to